Welcome back to Be Better Every Day, the podcast where we talk about self-improvement, mental health, relationships, and the ups and downs of becoming the best versions of ourselves.
We're your hosts, Josh and Mac, just two friends on a journey to level up in life, get in shape, and break free from bad habits, one day at a time.
No fake motivation, no perfection, just real talk, real struggles, and real growth.
So if you're working on yourself, figuring life out, or just need a little extra motivation, you're in the right place.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
All right, bruh. What's going on?
Life, man. Life.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited today. We're going to talk about mental health. So, that's something I'm interested in.
Something we both care about.
And something we actually got to, take part in last night, which was pretty cool.
Yep.
I didn't even think, something like that was happening around here. And it was so nice to find out that there was a panel for men's mental health. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a group of really cool guys.
Oh, for sure. 100%, dude. So let's talk about mental health. And what I want to first start off with is, what is mental health versus mental illness? Because a lot of times it
the line can get crossed.
Yeah. So,
or the interpretation can get crossed.
Exactly. Mental health is something that everyone experiences. Just like physical health, we take care of ourselves to maintain our mental health. Poor mental health can lead to stress and burnout. Mental illness, also known as mental health conditions, are experienced by 1 in 5 Americans. They often need to be treated, such as with medication or, seeing a therapist. And when it comes to mental health conditions, you need to be evaluated to know if you really have a mental health condition.
Yeah, I think self-diagnosing of schizophrenia or any kind of panic disorder or anything like that is not healthy.
Well, there's a lot of self-diagnostics that happens nowadays thanks to Google.
Yeah, I think WebMD, with the creation of WebMD, everybody becomes their own medical professional.
Yeah, and now with ChatGPT, it's also a helpful tool that people are using.
Yeah.
And there are over 300 recognized mental illnesses, too.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. So let's talk about a little bit of mental health for us.
So I think the biggest thing for me is, I do struggle with mental health disorder. I have been diagnosed with PTSD and depression. And those are the two that I struggle with the most. Anxiety a little bit, clinical anxiety a little bit. But I think, a lot of times my mental health is a roller coaster. And so much of my mental health can be affected by the mental health of those around me.
Oh, 100% it can.
So, I know there's certain times a year that trigger my PTSD and my depression and stuff like that. But then so much of my depression or anxiety can be affected by the actions of others.
Oh, yeah. I feel you on that. And mine has a lot to do with being in chronic pain. So I kind of, have to ride that wave up and down constantly. And having short nerves, when my pain levels up and my nerve pain's high, my nerves for people is low.
Your threshold for bullshit is very low.
Yeah. But I also, I kind of want to get into, I have a bunch of mental health statistics. And then I didn't put out that I suffer being diagnosed with depression and anxiety because of riding the wave of chronic pain. So we both can speak from different experiences, and we both have actual diagnosed mental health disorders. So it's not like we're coming completely out of the dark.
And I think so much of my mental health, we just want to jump into it. before we jump into the statistics, is revolved around medication. And like, I know how much better I feel when I take my medication. So I'm on right now Wellbutrin, bupropion, 300 milligrams for my depression, and I know how good it is for me. But like a lot of people that suffer with mental illness, is like I get in this cycle of like, oh, we're having a bunch of good days in a row. We don't need medication.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope that's
Yeah,
easy to fall into.
yeah, and so fortunately for the last 6 months or so, I've been, I would say, 95% medication compliant, which has made a huge impact. Like not just for me, but for my family, my friends. I get into these cycles where I'll just shut people out. Josh will tell you there's like was years when we didn't talk.
Yep.
And I think, and not to say that it was my fault or his fault or anybody's fault. It was just, life and families and, mental illness and isolation and careers. And it was a plethora of things where we went through a period where we didn't talk. And I think, I forget if you called me one day and checked up on me or I called you one day just to see what was going on. And like, I'm so thankful for that phone call where we like reconnected and, and now it's like we don't hardly go more than a day or two without talking to each other just to check in and see what's going on. And
I know I had to reach out Monday because I was like, I didn't hear from him this weekend. So
yeah, I had a pretty good weekend actually.
know,
We were busy with the kids and, um, we're coming out of a rough year where we lost my mother-in-law and lost my grandfather, lost my career. And so, like, things at home just kind of fell apart. And, like, I was, like, embarrassed to have friends over and stuff like that because of the condition of the house. And we finally snapped out of it and got the house together, dude. And we had kids over this weekend. My 8-year-old had a friend spend the night for the first time. My 14-year-old, like, they went to a concert with her mom and one of her friends. She came home and spent the night. Like, the house was just filled with kids and, like, happiness. And so it's like, it was just busy. So that's, Josh reached out on Monday and, we had, Monday we hung out all day. We went to the store, got a bunch of groceries and stuff to make. And, my 14-year-old daughter had her boyfriend over at the house, which is kind of new. Kind of a new slope for me, which has been a wave of mental health emotions for me.
Baby's growing up.
Yeah, but we had a cookout, like, got my Blackstone fixed up. Me and the neighbor were playing darts in the garage. Like, it was just a great weekend. And so, but then other things happen and, that tide can turn quickly. And, so yeah, we're doing good right now. We're definitely riding the high. So
That's good. And a lot of times it's hard to, keep in touch when things are going good because you're busy, you're doing things. And so it's really easy to, not reach out, contact people like you normally would.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in that slippery slope, when things go too far the opposite way, then it's hard to reach out.
Yeah, and you're afraid to reach out.
Yeah.
I call it, I don't know if it's a clinical term, but I call it like anxiety paralysis.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know if that's a clinical term, but it's something I can relate to.
I mean,
easily.
just where I just shut down. And like, it's like I know like a due date for something is looming, and I'm like, okay, if I just get through today, like I can do a little bit extra the next 3 days. And then it carries over to where it's snowballed to where now it's like the day before, and it's an insurmountable task.
Yeah, like that. I just get through the day and I'll do it tomorrow, and then a week later you're like, oh shit, I got 6 days, 7 days worth of stuff that I got to catch up on now.
Yeah, and 4 hours to do it in.
Yeah,
but like I said, we're riding the high right now. And I'm thankful for that, and like I said, my biggest struggle for the longest time was medication compliant. And my mom was, when my wife and I were dating, she was like, one thing that she told my girlfriend at the time was, maybe you can get him to take his medication. And I was doing so good. And like, with my recent weight loss surgery, I'm on a lot of more medications now. I'm taking like a daily multivitamin that I wasn't taking before. I'm taking Prilosec. I'm taking like biotin. I'm taking like probiotics. I'm taking a calcium pill on top of like my normal Wellbutrin, my blood pressure medication, like my blood thinner, like it's a ton of pills. And I had like this thing where I was like splitting my pills up, where I was taking some in the morning and some in the evening, and I had like this little 2 a day pill thing that once a week I would sit down and organize all my pills, and I would keep them somewhere. And then sometime when we were cleaning the house, like when the house was a wreck and couldn't find anything, I always knew where my pill bottle was. And now it's like, can't find it. And it's like, so like, I have like my big bottles of pills in my dresser, and so I have to stand there every day and open every bottle, take one pill out, take 2 pills of vitamin D out, and like, and then so I was like, I had to sit there and do that every day, and it's like, dude, you could just go spend $4 and get another 2 a day thing. It's been 2 weeks, you're not gonna find it now. But I know as soon as I find it, as soon as I buy a new one, the other one's gonna show up.
Yeah, but it's also a lot easier to be compliant when you prep everything for the week.
Oh yeah, and it's just sitting on top of my dresser. I'm like, boom, first thing in the morning,
top, boom,
water bottle.
Because that was one of my hardest things when I was taking multiple pills a day, like upwards of 23, depending on what other supplements I was trying to, counteract some of the negative effects of my normal pills.
Yeah.
For being on them for so long. And I think that's been a good thing for me. I think we're at like 9 months, 11 months, something like that, of being off most medications except for being a medical cannabis patient.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was down to, I still take supplements. I still have like a little pill bottle upstairs of different supplements, but I don't even really register that.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of excited. Like, with my weight loss coming off, like, I don't even like. It's hard to think about, but like in 9 weeks, I've dropped 438. It's like 75 pounds.
That's insane to even think about.
Like 75. My clothes fit better. I feel better. Like, I know that I still have a long way to go. I was at 364 today.
Walking better.
Oh, dude. For real, could not walk March 28th.
I'm sure that plays a big part in your mental health right now.
Oh, so much. And like clothes, like I said, clothes fit better. I'm taking care of myself better. But like I'm looking forward to the day when I don't have to be on the blood pressure medication anymore.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. I talked to Nate about it when you brought over the Be Better shirt, Be Better Everyday shirt that you made. When you brought it to me, I said, well, I guess I'm going to have two soon.
Yeah.
I was like, because Mac's going to be smaller than me before too long. I said, so I guess I'm going to end up with two.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's good for me.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, I'll tell you what, being a medical cannabis patient has made me a better parent. And I think I've said it on here before, but like it's taken a lot of that anxiety away. And one of the things that we had kind of, when we went to that panel last night, what the guy Rudy had mentioned was like, he had taken a month off of work and was going to smoke a bunch of weed and just relax. He had worked hard. And I get that, but like what he found out was like he's really into sativas. And like I have always just been an indica guy because I look at it as like, okay, end of the day, this is my way to relax. This will get me ready. This will calm me down or whatever. And like, but he said being on a sativa opened up a lot of his creativity and stuff like that. So I definitely want to explore that.
Yeah, and that's something I noticed too is I never really was like paying attention to what, is it a sativa? Is it an indica? Is it a hybrid?
Mm-hmm.
me, I was just like, is it the highest?
Yeah.
And I would start my way there. But I've been refining that. Like because there are some that help you sleep better and help you be more creative. So it's all about and I feel like you got to find the strand that's right for you too.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
And the problem with those is, like, you find a strand that works really well, and then you get to the dispensary, and that strand's not available anymore.
Yeah, that's a real struggle, is keeping the supply chain.
Yeah.
I feel like, because as soon as you get onto something that you really like, you get like 2 or 3 weeks max, and then the next thing you know, it's gone.
Yeah.
But back to our mental health stuff, and back to that panel last night, dude. It was really incredible for some of the answers that we got and some of the stories that the men opened up about.
Yeah.
Because as somebody who's been in front of people talking about mental health and mental health struggles, I know how hard it is to open up about different things. Like the MC Brandon, when he opened up about his attempted suicide story, that was really powerful. And I really think stuff like that is super important for other men to hear. Like, because like one of the other guys say, everybody has thoughts of suicides at one point or a time, even if it's just a passing thought, like, oh God, I just want to fucking die. And then it's just because whatever you're going through at that moment. And for most people, it's just a passing thought. It's just, comes in and then leaves shortly after. But for a lot of people, it's something they live with daily. And that's where a panel like that and men opening up to other men about struggles like that is super important. So I was really impressed with that last night. And the fact that the MC Brandon was talking about doing more of these panels across Richmond. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, we got there about a half hour before it was supposed to start, and we drove by, and there was nobody inside. And we were like, are we going to be the only guys here?
Yeah.
And it filled up that space.
Yeah.
I would say there was probably 20 people there.
Yeah, easily. And like for somebody who's like not as much in the past 9-10 months, I haven't been like in the mental health arena, like what's going on in Richmond, but I'm still in it enough and know enough people that are still doing it that I didn't even hear about this till Sunday night. I didn't even know that RVA was doing a mental health week, and I really appreciate the organizers of putting together that. There was like yoga this Saturday on the James.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think there was a women's panel, or there was a women's panel coming up. I can't remember. But I was super excited about that, and I'm super excited about that moving forward. I'm hoping next year will be bigger, and it's something that can grow. Because Richmond's really big enough to support something like that.
Yeah, I would say we're a medium-sized, large city.
Yeah.
I think we kind of get, once you start incorporating, like, the metro Richmond area, I think so much of Richmond for so long was condensed down to the city.
Yeah.
But now with the highway system and people moving out to the suburbs and stuff like that, the Richmond area can really support, a lot.
Yeah, and most of the time the people don't realize that when people are talking about Richmond, they're really talking about the Tri-Cities, like the counties that surround the actual city. And it's like, we kind of like, when you tell somebody where you're from, you just say Richmond.
Yeah.
But you're really like...
I'm nowhere near Richmond,
Yeah. I mean, we're 20, 30 minutes, but that's
yeah, I can be
traffic.
in Richmond quickly.
Yeah. But it's just kind of boils down to, you think about just the city unless you're from here.
Yeah.
And we're really big enough to support stuff like this. And I feel like there should be more support.
Yeah.
And
you can say you're from Richmond and be an hour away from somebody. Yeah. Both of you say you're from the Richmond area, and you can be an hour away.
I mean, just to go to the other side of the county that we live in, it goes completely around to
Other
Richmond.
counties, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like 30. To get to the opposite side of this county,
You got
it's
past 2 counties to go
40 minutes.
Yeah, you got past 2 counties and the city to get to the other side of this county.
And that's no traffic.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're small in any means.
No. But yeah, I'm looking forward to more stuff like this. And then, we stayed around a little afterwards, and we talked with some of the guys, and there's opportunities for us to collaborate with them. And
yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
yeah, I really and really the person that I thought I would least connect with is the person that I'm most connected with.
Oh, yeah. You talking about Brandon?
No, I'm talking about Rudy.
Oh, Rudy?
Yeah.
Nate really enjoyed Rudy, too.
Yeah.
I was super excited because...
I don't want to share his story because there's a good chance that he's going to sit down with us and we'll give him a chance to tell his story. But,
yeah, 100%. And I was super excited that Nate connected with people because that's the first time I've been able to take him to like a mental health thing that I wasn't like... Normally, I would like work a table, so I can't really bring him and walk around with him because I was either tabling an event or when I was doing presentations, I couldn't take him into places because I was talking to patients at facilities.
Yeah, security issues.
Security issues,
HIPAA issues, yeah.
Things like that. So,
but and it was cool to see that the area of town that it is in, it was in the Chaco Bottom area of Richmond, is not an area that Josh or I probably frequent as much as we did when we were much younger. When I was younger and we were going out and stuff like that, we were in Chaco Bottom all the time, Yeah,
because that's where all the bars were at. So.
Exactly. But now that we're at a different stage in our life, but it, and it really shows that mental health doesn't know a demographic. It doesn't know an age group. It doesn't know a race. It doesn't know a gender,
Yeah.
It really affects everybody. And everybody, look, we're just all trying to get through this together.
Yeah. We're all trying.
And everybody's got problems. And just because, that thing we talked about, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to struggle. And, there was one guy there who posed a hypothetical question that probably wasn't very hypothetical.
Yeah, you could tell he was
It was very personal. And just for him to and then one thing I wanted to say to him is dude, to just even make that first step and just reach out to someone and say, hey, what do I do next? And
that was the first step.
Yeah.
He was asking what's the first step to do, and he literally did it. And
just reach out to someone. Yeah.
And he didn't even know that he did the first step. And he did the right thing.
Yeah. And the thing that Brandon was talking about is you're going to try something and you're going to fail. And you're going to do that over and over again. And then it reminded me of this thing that I used to say is fail forward. Yeah. How many times did, Nikola Tesla figure out electricity doesn't work, before, Thomas Edison came along and stole his idea. How many times did a light bulb not work before the light bulb finally turned on?
And I think it was over 1,000 times, I think.
Yeah. And, look, we have lights now.
I know. Now we take them for granted all the time.
So much. I didn't tell you, I've got into smart lights. One night my wife and I were laying in bed and I was joking, I didn't want to get up and turn the lights off. I just did not, I was borderline. I was so done with the day. I was we're just going to sleep with the lights on. And I started clapping my hands on the old school clapper. And I was it's such an easy problem to solve. We'll just get smart light bulbs.
Yeah.
And so we had got some and we put them downstairs in the living room around Christmas time. And we just never got the ones for upstairs. And then I bought some for upstairs and I go to take the cover off of the fan fixture. And I'm oh, of course it doesn't take the light bulbs that I bought. I bought the standard light bulbs and it takes the little tiny ones.
Oh, the tiny, yeah.
The decorative ones. So I ordered the decorative ones and now it won't connect to the app that I have. And then so I finally reconnect to another app. I downloaded, I took those light bulbs out, put the old ones back in. And it's one of those things where you got to hold it up because the chain goes through the cover and you got to hold it up there while you're changing the light bulbs. Your arms are tired. And so I finally said screw it and put the old ones back in there. And as soon as I did, this new app that I downloaded tried to connect to those light bulbs. And I'm you got to be kidding me. And
you know what all that sounds like? Harder than getting up and turning off the light.
It's so much harder. I put so much effort into doing less.
Isn't it funny how that works out?
Yeah, but it's cool because when I was in the Navy, when I came home for one of my deployments, I battled insomnia. Um, and what I found was like for that 6 month period that I was on deployment, I'd only been sleeping in a berthing like that had red lights. So they turn these red lights on at night that are make the room dark enough, but lit enough if there was an emergency and you had to get up, you could see to get out, or you could see inside your rack. You're not distracted. Like if I had to go back to the berthing in the middle of, we work 12-hour shifts on the ship 7 days a week. You go back to the berthing to change to go to the gym or something like that. Somebody else is already asleep. You don't want to interrupt them, so you go and you find your stuff. And I came home and dude, I went like 5 days, could not sleep to the point where I had to go get on like Ambien to like knock myself out. And of course, being like a 21-year-old guy in the military, like my apartment was decorated like a shitty bar. Like I mean, I would go to like every thrift store or yard sale and find like I had like really cool. And looking back now, I didn't know what I had, but I had like really cool like Budweiser mirrors with like the Clyde, like the hand painted mirrors with the Clydesdales pulling the old wagon or whatever on like this 4 foot wide mirror that's probably worth hundreds of dollars that I sold for like $40. But I went to Spencer's one day and they had a Coors Light thing that had like a red LED thing around it that lit up red. Dude, I took it home, plugged it in my room, slept so good. And all I needed was that little bit of red light. Dude, I had tried TV on, TV off, radio on, everything. And I was just missing that little bit of red light. But it had gotten such in my psyche. So now when I have those smart light bulbs, I got like a little bedside table now with a little lamp on it. Put one of the smart bulbs in it. Dude, I sleep with the red lights on now. And it doesn't really affect my wife. It's still dark enough in there that she can sleep peacefully. But it's that little bit. And dude, I've slept so much better. I've gotten up and my watch has been like, oh, your sleep score was 76. Which is not great, but way better than being in the 30s, Yeah.
And sleep is so important for your mental health.
Oh, man.
Sleep is so important for just health.
And I'll tell you what, at the end of every day, my watch tells me, oh, you had a very stressful day today. It can tell by the way my heart rate fluctuates. It's like you need to get extra sleep tonight. Dude, the last 3 days, my watch has been like, you had an easy day today. And I was like, man, that feels good.
Yeah.
Like, I wish sometimes my watch would lie to me.
You've been using that CPAP too?
Not.
No, I could tell by your face.
I go to, like, well, the other day, I'm not gonna lie, dude, I had the CPAP mask on. I'm like digging inside the mask to scratch my nose. And so what I've been doing, I'll fall asleep with it on, and then I will, when I get up to use the bathroom, I won't put it back on. So I just need to make a better habit. But I'm doing way better than I was before.
Yeah. And like I told you before, I don't know if I mentioned it on here, is I wish there was a bigger size mask for my CPAP.
Yeah.
Because if it comes down too far, it makes my nose itch too.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is about that mask being down. It just hits a perfect spot. It makes your nose so itchy, and then you're like reaching up in your mask, and then you got the whole Darth Vader happening everywhere.
And since the room's been clean and the house has been clean, sleeping so much better, dude.
Well, that's when I think Jordan Peterson talks about cleaning your room and how important to have a clean.
No, just
clean
not
room.
Waking up in chaos and like stepping over stuff.
Yeah.
Is like it just
because if your environment,
our family functions better.
Yeah, if your environment's chaos, how is your mind going to be clear? Like the room we're sitting in right now is kind of dirty because Nate's been home and we're still trying to like find Nate all his stuff from college this year homes. Yeah. So it's clutter in here and it's been driving me crazy for a couple weeks now, but I just know it's temporary.
Yeah. This is speaking of changes in the household. Puppy's coming on Monday.
Dude, puppy can be amazing for mental health.
Yeah, I'm excited because I know, like, even though I had the surgery, I do need to walk more than I've been walking. Like, I've been getting, like, 5 and 6, 7,000 steps a day and stuff like that. And that's great because I was getting, like, 2. And some days, triple-digit numbers. And, so, but I'm making an appointment in the morning to get up in the morning. Even in, like, I get up in the morning, I go down to my garage. And I just sit there for a little while. I do talk to my mom on her way to work. I try to read a little bit. If I don't, I'll just dick around on my phone. But that's like my me time. It gives me like 30 minutes to an hour to like adjust to the day. Um, but like I know that with the puppy coming, like the walks are gonna happen more frequently, a couple times a day. That's gonna be great for me. It's gonna be good to have a companion, you know.
Yeah, a
Um,
walking buddy.
a walking buddy, just somebody to just sit on the couch with and like just chill. And our dog passed away back in October, and that was for what he was I always joke around that he was the dumbest dog in the world, and he was he was born without a back left paw, so it kind of he had a pad back there, and they think the umbilical cord got wrapped around when he was born. He just never developed a paw, and the lady at the rescue shelter was like, "Oh, you're going to give him a prosthetic leg," and I'm like, "I don't think you know, like this dog, we got a $25 dog with a $500 limit, not the same, but like, it's and like now it's like, but Pokey was so awesome. If you got up on that recliner, like he was getting up there with you, and in 10 minutes you're both snoring on each other.
Well, there's like a couple of studies that I've seen this year about dogs in particular, that dog owners, can't remember exactly how many years it is, but it's like between 5 and 10 years longer on average, just because you have a dog.
Yeah.
And which I thought was funny because the same study also did a study on cats, and cats make no difference.
And
but I also know that there are cat people, and people love their cats.
Yeah.
So
and my wife loves our cat. I am indifferent about the cat.
yeah.
I mean, I don't not like the cat. She just doesn't have an effect on my life. Like I know the dog will. And this is the first time we're getting like a full size dog. What I would call a full. Pokey was like a Chihuahua.
Yeah, that was a small dog.
Terrier mix, and he was just. I mean, he was. We called him Derpy. I mean, he was just a dumb dog. I mean, but
that's
he was awesome.
Sometimes.
He was awesome. He was loyal to a fault.
Yeah.
And we're excited about. I'm excited about getting a full size dog. Someone that I can. Pokey would play fetch, but would not fetch. He would go chase a tennis ball, but there was no bringing it back.
Yeah.
He would chase the tennis ball, and then I would just have to go to wherever he left it at. And so I'm excited. I know that like it's gonna get outside. It's gonna get me moving more. It's gonna be great for my mental health. I'm excited about taking him to Lowe's, and we'll ride up to Bass Pro Shop and everywhere that's pretty much dog friendly.
Yeah.
And I know that it's going to be good. I don't want to say that we're empty nesters, but our children are relying on us less.
Yeah.
We have one that's 17, about 17 and a half. I have one that's 14, going to be 15 in July. And I have one that's 8, going to be 9 in July. She's pretty, we still have to stay on top of her a lot. But the other ones can feed themselves and,
Yeah.
they let us know when they need money or they want to go somewhere. I don't want to say we're empty nesters by any means, but, I think I'm looking forward to have something that relies on me a little bit more as well. And we've gone out and I've already bought the dog food for him. I got to put the crate together. We do want to crate train him. We were looking at toys yesterday at Hobby Lobby for him and stuff like that. And, it's exciting to bring something new into the household. And that's going to be a big motivator for keeping the house straight up as well, because these kids are going to learn that, much like a toddler, a puppy, figures things out with its mouth,
Yeah. I know. Better pick those shoes up.
Yeah.
But getting back to mental health, I definitely want to share some stats so people know that they're not alone. And like I brought up earlier, how 1 in 5 people suffer with a mental illness. Not just like, oh, I'm down in the dumps right now. An actual mental.
Not I'm sad.
Yeah. So just think about that as, think about your 4 closest friends. And if none of you know one of you have a mental illness, just think about if one of the people did.
Yeah.
Would you reach out? Would they reach out to you? And it's a really important topic to carry with your friends, because your ride or dies are supposed to be your ride or die, whether you have a mental illness or not, and they're supposed to be the ones that have your back when you're going through the things.
Yeah, and one thing that they mentioned last night at the panel was, check on your okay friends. Because just because you think everybody's okay, everybody's not okay.
Yeah, his poem at the end was literally check on your strong friends.
Duh.
That poem was
Duh.
powerful.
Yeah.
How about, don't know if you know this, but anxiety disorder is the highest percentage in that, which is pretty understandable. It's like over 42 million Americans that have been diagnosed with anxiety disorder.
It's got to be all the Americans.
I know, that's what you think about it. It's like, no way America's that big.
Yeah.
But and what a lot of people don't know is another thing is when mental illness can even start showing up in people. And this is one of the things I wish school systems and people knew more of, is they can start showing up as early as 14 years old, depending on the disorder, and a lot of like the more serious stuff shows up between 18 and 25, like bipolar and schizophrenia and all these things. They really start showing up when you become an adult and your brain is still, forming, and it's something we don't even talk about or acknowledge about.
Well, and so many of those kids, went through COVID and, didn't get a graduation, or they went through those formative years of 14 to 18. And, now we're finding, young adults that can't cope, because, a lot of, we had a lot of high school experiences that really formed who we are as young adults, as teenagers and into young adulthood, that are experiences that those kids didn't get. And it's really, I think we're starting to recognize the long-term effects of that isolation and, that lack of human interaction. And, a lot of kids started doing school at home, and they were just in their rooms doing school, and they weren't even really interacting with their parents as much. And
I know we've been friends for 20-some years now?
Yeah.
Because we met in high school.
Yeah, like 25 years, yeah.
And a lot of these kids are not going to have those same experiences. I know Nate doesn't, because he spent his whole high school career doing virtual school.
Exactly.
Which was good for him because it worked better for him as an individual. And
my son Noah.
I mean, there's always outliers in each direction, but I think social.
That's the one that I'm worried about with Noah, is that like the homeschooling is way better for him. We don't do a formal curriculum with him, but he's also not lacking in any area.
Yeah.
Our
biggest thing with Nate was because he's social outgoing and he'll talk to anybody. Like an adult, he has no problem walking up to any adult.
No, and he deals with adults very well.
Yeah. So
but
that was one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
We were like that, but my niece and nephew, they needed to go back.
Yeah.
You need to interact with people.
And that's like my son. He's fine doing homeschool. I wish he did some. I don't think he'll ever go into a tradition. His kind of some of his issues that revolve around his autism, make it difficult. And then, it's a social spectrum that he lives on. And in some ways I'm kind of jealous of it a little bit. He has some autistic superpowers that I don't possess. But I know he longs for that interaction, the social interaction, that he just doesn't understand why he can't get it.
Yeah.
And like he one thing that I had to realize is, like, when dealing with him, is I have to express my emotions to him verbally, because he can't read nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
And for someone who doesn't interact with someone like that on a neurodivergent level, it's hard for them to understand. Like, he doesn't go to a lot of family functions, but it's just because they stress him out, and I come from a very loud family, and he will not fare well in that environment.
Which is understandable. I mean, there's times where I can't be around a lot of people. If my pain level's up, I can't.
Yeah.
It just frazzles me, man. I just
feel
like everything is
Yeah, my other two girls, like, there's no option to homeschool them. Like, it's not in the cards for them. They need that social interaction.
Yeah. Which,
Um,
for the most part, majority of people, we need interaction. We need a tribe.
I was listening to um, Shane Gillis' podcast with Matt McCusker, Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, and they were saying, we were designed to live in like 300-person villages,
Yeah.
where everybody relied on the strengths and weaknesses of one another to cohabitate together, to live in these environments together. We weren't designed to be in these mega metropolis cities and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I think the number's even smaller than 300. Because I think there's a study that shows like most people can only remember like 150 faces and names.
Yeah.
And then once you get over that, like your brain, like you have to like basically either be born with the gift for it or you got to like work at it.
Train yourself for it.
Yeah.
We're designed to be in these small villages, and that's why I think it's so important that we have like a core group of friends and family that we can connect with, because I'll tell you what, like you and I are a lot closer than a lot of people in my blood family,
Yeah, and a lot of times that's what happens is, it's not always about the family you're born into, it's the family you choose to be around you. So I want to share this with you too. Mental health crises accounted for 60 million visits to the ER and primary care last year. 60 million. And you don't even think about it, like that many people going to the doctor. I know you don't hear from people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I used to talk about in my presentation is we should be able to be open more about it. And it should be like, if I went to the doctor yesterday for a sprained ankle, I should be able to say, hey, dude, I was in crisis, and reach out.
Well, that's what we talked about is what we talked about in the previous podcast is like they want to, is the need to pour so much resources into training police to deal with mental health situations.
Yeah, and that's some of the presentations I used to do was go to the police department and put a face and give a story and, hopefully not, most importantly is not put their own life at risk, but to know that you're meeting somebody that's likely going through the worst day of their life or is suffering through a mental health episode a lot of times.
Yeah, and they say, we need to have so many social workers, assigned to each police department to respond to calls for people in crisis. That's absolutely true. We do. But there's such a need for people in the social work field that the ones that are in it, first of all, it requires a lot of training and doesn't pay a lot.
No, I think that's a big barrier
to entry for it.
Is like, why would you get involved in this?
Yeah.
If you can't support a family on it.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people that I met through my presentations and doing peer recovery work, or having to volunteer to go out and volunteer their time to go meet with police officers as they're responding to a mental health crisis.
Well, that one guy, there's not so much, not just, there needs to be, the problem with the fact that the police have to respond to so many of these, because the next door neighbor's lost his mind and he's out in the front yard and he's got a pistol, and then, it becomes a criminal situation when really it's a mental health situation. And then you get there and because there's such a need for those services, that when they finish with that call, they're so quickly responding to another call that there's no services for the police as well as a place to decompress. And then, for the longest time, people saw getting mental health help as a sign of weakness, Yeah. And so I think a lot of that stigma is starting to go away.
Yeah, I think COVID really shined a much needed spotlight on it.
Yeah, so
Because when
like,
everybody got trapped at home and
yeah, and I mean, I get it. The kind of work that I was doing before in the facility, we respond to one incident, and then unless a staff member or the resident or something got seriously injured, I mean, within 5-10 minutes, you're responding to another incident, and there's no time to decompress or to talk it out. Or are you guys okay? How do you feel about what happened? This is something we could have done better. This is something we need to work on. This is something you guys did really well, you know. And so I always try to make a point in the next day that we work, we'd have our briefings when he came in, and I'm kind of giving them the rundown of the previous shift, and I always made sure to highlight, hey guys, this is like this guy, Jeff or whatever did this really well, or Tim, let's kudos to Tim for the way that he reacted to this situation or whatever, and these are some things that we also need to work on,
Yeah.
And I think, just because there's so much need for services and calls that they don't have time to decompress an incident. Like the guy talked about, he responded to a child that was not breathing, and he was the one doing CPR, and then later finds out that, the child had passed. And you have to carry that with you. Did I do something wrong? Did I do the CPR right? And sometimes it's just out of your hands. Sometimes that's God's plan for whatever, for that person's life. But, there also needs to be services and stuff like that for the first responders as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the problem too is there needs to be a lower barrier to entry about going, because a lot of people don't get help that they need because they don't have insurance or they can't afford it. Like I think it's almost 6 out of 10 people with a mental health disorder or illness don't get treatment or get medication.
Yeah, I have, when I was going through my situation last year from August to November, I was still employed and still had my insurance and everything. And I had, I sought out a counselor, therapist, or whatever when I was, when my mother-in-law passed, and she stayed with me, and she worked with me through my, my separation from work and everything. And then once I separated from work, I lost my insurance and I couldn't see her anymore. And that definitely, that had been right at the same time my grandfather passed and stuff like that. And, I so looked forward to our meetings every 2 weeks or whatever. And the last couple of weeks we met every week. And, that hit me really hard, and I haven't really sought out a therapist afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's an issue. It's a barrier right now because I haven't seen my therapist in a year because I lost my insurance last June. And so it's been almost exactly a year since the last time I was able to talk to my therapist. And it really is an issue for a lot of people. Just insurance in general.
Yeah, the healthcare system in America.
It really sucks that, there's people walking around with mental health issues, sick, just normal sick, or hurt themselves, and they can't go get help because, our country doesn't think it's
a priority.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a right.
Yeah.
I get that we're a free market, but there's also ways to help people.
Yep.
Other than, a few people's bottom line.
Yep.
But back to more statistics and more information. This is kind of going to get into a little bit of things that I know we both care about, and was touched on a little bit last night, which I thought was powerful, is suicide. And I know that's a big thing for soldiers suffering with PTSD. So it's definitely something that I want to bring up here. More than 40,000 Americans die annually from suicide. And then in 2022, it hit a record high of 49,000 people passing away from suicide. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. right now. So it makes the top 10.
Yeah, and it's something that's, I don't want to say preventable, but it's something that, with just a little bit of treatment can get somebody out of that hole.
Yeah, and for Um, People under the age of 44, it's the second leading cause of death. Under 44.
Mm.
And then 45 to 50, it's the fifth leading cause is suicide. And for every woman who dies by suicide, 4 men die by suicide.
Mm.
And one of the guys last night, he brought up how at Christmas time, when he couldn't get his kids, he knew he wasn't going to be able to afford presents, how he went to his bathroom and he was contemplating suicide. And it's like one of the leading causes, and why Christmas is like the highest suicide rate of the year, is all that financial burden.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's such a good time of year for the most part.
Yeah.
Unless you're struggling, then it can really reflect.
Yeah. I mean, they say like 22 service members a day commit suicide. I mean, that's a huge part of, the population. And, these guys come home, and much like we talked about with the police and law enforcement, there's, a lot of guys separate from the military. And then there's no way to turn off like what you've done or what you've seen, or, pause it. Hello? Hey, what's up? Uh-huh. What's that? All right. Shout out to my daughter Ella Grace, got a 96.55 on her health final.
Nice.
Well, I'm recording the podcast right now, but I will come get you when I'm done.
I'm done with school.
Hold on. You want to shout out the podcast, Ella?
Hi, podcast.
Hello, world.
Hello, Ether. All right, yeah, let me wrap this up, and then I got to pick up something for your mom, and then I'll be over there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, I love you.
You too.
All right, bye. Usually she only calls when she has a panic attack.
Oh. Speaking of mental health.
Yeah, exactly. So. That's why I had to answer. But yeah, 22 veterans a day. I've had friends from the military commit suicide, and yeah, I know. And one thing that it's starting to come to light more nowadays is this thing called it's called MST, which is military sexual trauma. And how that is affecting people long term, because it's somebody that, it's a form of like, it's definitely rape. Someone in a person in a higher authority figure or whatever in the military, oftentimes will, hold a promotion over someone's head, or special set of orders, or a special duty, or whatever, or training, and they'll require, and that's just definitely an abuse of power. And I don't know if it was happening as much when I was in the Navy. The unit that I was in when I first got there was all male. We had like one female flight surgeon, the doc, but she worked at the hospital and stuff like that. But she was attached to our unit. She would come give us our flu shots and TB tests and stuff like that. But, there was like, a ship of 5,000 people, and there were like 20 females on there. You can't tell me like some crazy stuff wasn't happening, and then we slowly got females. They added females to our squadron, but I think when I left, there were only like 10 females out of 200 people in our unit, and of course they were dating guys in the unit and stuff like that, and I'm sure there were definitely some abuses of power and stuff like that were going on. I'm not making any accusations, but I was saying just statistically, it probably happened.
Yeah.
So, and I hate to see that, because that wasn't what I signed up for. I signed up to defend the country, and I signed up because I believe we live in an amazing country, and there's a responsibility that comes with living here, and it's a responsibility that my family's taken. My grandfathers both took seriously. It's one that I felt called and led to. And if you don't, that's fine too. It's not for everybody. Like you, I mean, your back alone wouldn't have allowed you to serve in the military.
Not for very long.
No, but it doesn't mean that you're not thankful for the guys that did serve, and you're not appreciative of what people do sacrifice, because they say you're writing when you sign that contract to join the military, you're signing a contract that you're signing a blank check to the United States for a sum in total that could include your life.
Yeah.
And that's got to be something that you take seriously, because that's a inherent risk that can happen.
And I'm super proud. I used to contract for Army and National Guard, and there was times where, we were installing, and people would come up and thank us because the night vision we installed saved their lives when they were over there. And not only just from being able to see, IEDs and stuff like that, but we had a guy tell us that it literally stopped a sniper bullet from hitting him right in the face as he was driving the vehicle.
And it's like, those guys that have those experiences overseas, and they have to come home and live with that trauma. And, once you separate, you can go to the VA, but the mental health system at the VA is, they're doing the best they can, but much like the social work system, there's not a lot of money in public service. And
not a lot of money in the VA, just period, let alone help, people with actual physical things happening at moments. Just, there's not enough resources, not enough people.
And then something that's affected both of us in our families is people that deal with, because they have a lack of resources or way to obtain resources, self-medicate and,
Yeah, I mean, I know personal experience where, close friends and family use, really bad drugs to self-medicate being bipolar or other issues.
Yeah, and, whether it's a lack of, resources or the ability to obtain resources or even the drive to want to admit that you have a problem and you need something, you turn to that self-medication because it's easier than admitting you have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not, with hard drugs. I mean, people do it every day with alcohol too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it, and still do it with food. Who doesn't do it with food sometimes
exactly.
from time to time?
Different people's coping mechanism, you know.
And I think if we started at a younger age, because like one of the things they said that guy who was really reaching out last night, he said, "You don't know what you don't know."
Yeah.
And I think back on that, and there was a lot of things if I knew, sooner.
Yeah.
Who knows how much further ahead? So that's why I think
the thing
stuff like this is important.
The thing the guy was saying to you last night about getting Nate out, that creates an open dialogue between the two of you about mental health, that he knows that you're a safe space that he can turn to when he's struggling. You know,
and he's been in therapy for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
because I realized once I started going, I saw the importance of it. I think there should be more therapists, and I think therapy should just be part of your normal annual health care.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you just talk to a therapist, once a quarter.
Yeah. Twice a year checkup.
Yeah. It should be like your yearly checkup.
Yeah.
Your
physical should get a mental health evaluation.
Exactly. It should be just like that. It should just be part of the healthcare system, as opposed to, only if you have a problem, And who doesn't at some point in the year need somebody they could talk to that they don't have to worry about being judged by, or
absolutely.
Because a lot of times that's the biggest barrier is about talking and opening up to your friends about it is you're going to feel like you're going to be judged, or what are they going to say to me, or they're going to look at me different, or just questions like that come up normally. Is just being human. We never want to feel like we're judged, or or that we're letting other people down. So it's hard to take that first step out there.
Yeah.
I know that's one thing that I learned from doing my presentations and I I really took serious when people would open up to me after I did a presentation, or why I was pretty honest and open with when I did the presentations.
Yeah.
Because, we always feel like we're alone a lot of the times when we're depressed and that no one understands. And
No one's going through no one's been through what I'm going through.
yeah, and it's always, if you start looking around, there's probably somebody who's been through a very similar situation. Everybody's exact situation is completely different, but there's people who's been through similar situations and can relate to you. It's just, it's getting easier to find people that are like you out there.
Yeah.
With social media, it's just we get distracted with the scrolling on Instagram and through Facebook and.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking about taking we're gonna start. I think was it June 5th? June
I thought
4th?
it was second.
Oh, was it June 2nd?
Yeah, I think so.
I need to look it up.
The 40-40 challenge.
The 40-40 challenge.
Yeah, when I was listening to the guy whose space we were in, the juice place, the owner, when he was talking about how he takes fast from different things. He'll just pick like social media or food sometimes.
Yeah.
But he says he picks different things. TV. Sitting. Yeah, when he said he fasts from sitting, and I was like, oh, I can tell you're not 300 pounds.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about taking, I don't have Instagram. I don't get on Instagram, but I do mindlessly scroll on Facebook. And sometimes first of all, it's 60% ads.
Yeah.
And
me, Jackie, and Nate, we all will stroll Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And, I have a pair of sunglasses. I didn't need another pair of sunglasses, but yesterday I was like, oh, Shady Rays has got a deal, Yeah,
retail therapy?
Yeah, and so I think I might, while we're doing the 40-40 challenge, take a 40-day Facebook fast.
Ooh, I like that. It's going to
Yeah.
be hard to stay off Marketplace for 40 days.
It might be financially advantageous for you, though.
I mean, mostly it's just window shopping.
Exactly.
Most of what I want is old junk cars,
Yeah.
so I just can't afford $2,000 a pop.
Yeah, when he was talking about the fasting last night, I'm like, dude, maybe I need a 40-day Facebook fast. I don't want to fast from YouTube or whatever because that's like
yeah, it's like my TV.
that is my TV. That's my source of entertainment, And but maybe I need to be more intentional about what I'm consuming.
Yeah, that makes
a lot of times it's just on in the background as noise because I don't want to be stuck with my own thoughts. When we really talk about mental health, it's like everybody's like, oh, why are you always watching something on your phone? Well, it's because, first of all, you don't want to hear the stuff that goes on in my head when I'm not listening, I'm not actively engaged in something, even if it is just noise.
Back to back to the veterans. I want to go back to that because I think it's really important to give some statistics about veterans. And like you brought up the 22 a day, which they think that the number is not exactly accurate on 22 a day. Could be a little bit higher than that. But,
oh wow! I thought that was gonna be on the high end.
No. They think I've seen some places say it could be up to 24 or 25, just depending. And I think
one person an hour.
I know, it's wild. 30% of active duty and military personnel deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq suffer from a mental illness.
I'm
just straight off the top.
Kind of higher.
Me too.
Yeah.
But that's just some of the statistics. And over 40% of all veterans struggle with their mental health or substance abuse.
For sure.
Yeah, 40%.
I mean, I was drinking heavily when I was in the Navy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was every Friday and Saturday night we were up at the VFW and, we were drinking and playing darts and it's like, it just became, it's so ingrained in the culture, especially in the Navy. Like, guys at the town and and we had talked about before how like I wish I had like done more stuff on deployment. Like my second deployment, I made it more of a point to go out and like engage in the culture and stuff like that. But like my first deployment, I mean, I was like 19, 20, and it was like we were just going out and like you hit the streets and we were drinking. You know, me and my buddy used to the same. You know, the first thing in port was liquid diet. You know,
Yeah.
and it's like so unhealthy. Like, you know, you and I when we went to Mexico for my surgery, we got out and we kind of, you know, immersed ourselves in the culture and made sure we got to see things in the city and stuff like that. Even if we were just walking around, you know, and it's like, you know, I wish I had just taken that time to do that or taken more pictures. I have great memories and stuff like that, but like,
I know.
so much of my memories involve around drinking in Hong Kong, you know, or the nights in Thailand on the Thai streets, you know.
Well, I was I can't remember if I sent you the podcast, but I watched the veteran on Real Ones last week podcast, and he was talking about I think he did 2 deployments or something like that, maybe 3, but he was talking about when he came back to the United States, just the amount of unhealthy habits he had because he needed that dopamine rush after being over there. I think he got blown up 5 times while he was over there, and he was just talking about like nothing here is real. He goes, after you're over there, he goes, and you're hearing people bitch about how they can't pay their whatever today, or, you know, somebody stressed them out at work, and he was like, you have no idea what real life and death situation is. And when you're in it, I mean, that's all you can think about. And how do you come down from that?
Yeah,
after you're immersed in an overseas operator situation, like, what's normal?
When I came home from my deployment, like, you think about, like, all the guys that are away from their wife and kids and stuff like that, but what really doesn't get highlighted is these single guys that come home. Like, I literally came home to an apartment. Like, my family wasn't there when I came home from deployment. My friends weren't there. Like, I had a couple, like, yeah, like, it was cool to see my buddies' wives and stuff like that. Like, they were, their kids were there giving them hugs and stuff like that, and you look around and it's like, dude, nobody's here for me.
Yeah.
I went home to a car that had a flat tire, you know, and nothing in the refrigerator because we'd thrown everything away prior to going on deployment.
Yeah.
And, like, literally had a bottle of Jim Beam in the freezer. And I took full advantage of that. And it was so unhealthy.
Yeah. One of the statistics here is fewer than half of returning vets go and get mental health treatment or receive it. Even if they try to reach out, sometimes they don't even receive it because it takes so long before.
It's 3 months. Like, that's why I stopped going. You know, the VA wants to do group therapy because that's the quickest way to treat the most amount of people. But, like, for me, group therapy doesn't work. Like, I need individual therapists, but it's like, you know, my buddy goes and sees a therapist. He can only see her once a quarter because...
Yeah, it takes so long in between visits.
Yeah, she's just so overbooked.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you build a personal relationship with someone that you're not seeing on a regular basis? She's not going to remember what you talked about 3 months ago.
Exactly.
Because she's seen 150 other patients between then.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this number might be a little bit on the low side from what I found, but it says 20% of veterans that come home have a traumatic brain injury and or PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And I know basically every veteran that I know has some kind of form of PTSD.
Yeah, and well, what was different was I wasn't sure what mine was because, like, when you think about I have what they call moral trauma. So we were in Hong Kong Christmas 2004, the day after Christmas, the tsunami hit in Indonesia. We went down there for 43 days, and the amount of stuff that we saw was crazy. I started getting nightmares about it. I would wake up disoriented, covered in cold sweats, didn't know where I was. Like, my wife would have to calm me down. Like, but like, I don't have with combat related trauma, you know? So like you would think when you think PTSD, you think of guys that were blown up or
Exactly.
experienced combat trauma or whatever. But I think about like the guys that work in Dover, Delaware, where they have the military's mortuary services. Like when the guys come home that have been killed in action or whatever, they're the ones that prepare the bodies for the military funerals and stuff like that. They're the ones that put the put the uniforms on and make sure everything's perfect for the families prior to viewings and stuff like that. Like the amount of stuff they have to see, like what do they have to deal with? You know what I mean? And it's like those guys don't. That stuff is not the non-combat related traumas, like we talked about, like the military sexual traumas and stuff like that. The stuff that's not combat related or action related or traumatic brain injury and stuff like that is not getting addressed.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing is I couldn't go to group therapy, and because they made sure when when you go to group therapy that you talk about ways to deal with your PTSD and not actually your trauma.
Yeah.
And so it's like a lot of coping mechanisms and stuff like that. But I can't help but looking around the room, and even though these guys don't know my story, it's like, oh, like mine is not as serious as theirs, because theirs is like,
yeah,
I got 4 Purple Hearts,
Yeah. I got a Bronze Star because,
Exactly, and I got like a humanitarian medal, which is, I'm so thankful for what we did for those people over there in Indonesia and the services we provided. But my problem is I wish I know that it's very expensive to keep an aircraft carrier there on site, but like there was more I wish we could have done,
But you touched on a good point there, is sometimes people won't open up because they feel like, my problem isn't as serious.
You invalidate your own trauma.
And you give yourself more trauma.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, why am I bitching? Because, this guy got blown up telling his story, and, I couldn't stay longer and help other people.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a real thing.
But then when Katrina hit in America, and, we had those big, any kind of natural disaster, it just hits me super hard.
Yeah. Which is understandable. How about 39% of Iraq or Afghanistan veterans are likely to suffer from alcohol abuse? 897,000 plus veterans with no help on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Which I get that, when you're in it, you got to be a certain way, but we got to provide more help on the back end, I feel like.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much more you want to talk about, or if you just want to cut it off here because it's been 75 minutes.
Wow, it doesn't seem like it's been that long.
I also have statistics on teenagers' mental health and college.
Well, let's just go ahead and run through some of the numbers real quick, and then...
Yeah, we'll give some more numbers. We can do that. So, when it comes to college-age kids, more than 25% of college students have been diagnosed or treated by a professional for mental illness. 34% of college students have a mental health condition said their college didn't even know about or didn't know when they were in crisis. 73% of college students with mental health conditions have experienced on-campus mental health crisis. And before the pandemic, that was 67% of college kids felt suicidal. And I can speak a little bit about this because my son and some of his dorm mates were in crisis this year and with no support system, really. I mean, you can go to the on-campus therapist a few times, but like there's not enough funding. There's not enough counselors there for all the students. So
I was going to touch on. I do feel for Nate, and a lot of it is, we talked about previously that generation of not having that socials. He's in that generation of kids, of the COVID kids.
Well, that and like our generation as parents are the ones that are finally starting to realize that, oh, these things from our parents and grandparents, you know, that we're trying to like finally discover, like, oh, maybe these are things we generationally heal.
Yeah. And
And
I think a lot of times, I mean, the only time I remember my dad going to see a therapist was when they were trying to save a failing marriage that was already doomed.
yeah, I
You
couldn't
know?
imagine like, it would shock me if my dad said he was going to go see a therapist. And he has 2 kids that, are like,
Actively engaged in mental health. You
yeah,
know?
exactly. And so even though he has that, and he's been on walks with us to support us and stuff like that,
Yeah, it's not
to
his
think
path.
about him.
Yeah. Oh, dude, my grandpa at 100 years old
Oh,
went to see
you're-
a therapist.
oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
right. He's like, I'm not. My grandpa would not replace his coffee cup.
Yeah.
He's not spending $35 a week to see a therapist with insurance. You know.
Exactly. I'll just give some teen depression statistics, and then we can wrap up, because we both have teenage kids, and I'm sure our listener base is probably close to our age and probably has kids
Yeah.
around the same age. 20% of all teenagers suffer with depression before they reach adulthood. Nearly 30% of teens with depression are being treated for it. So 70% are not.
No. We had a. My sister, she's not my sister. My daughter had a friend commit suicide this year. You know, and that's terrific. It was. I can't imagine what he was going through when he made that decision. But to see, how much she suffered as a friend who felt like, could I have done more? You know?
Yeah. And an adolescent dies from suicide every 100 minutes, making it the 3rd leading cause of death between the ages of 15 to 24. 3rd. Female teens develop depression twice as often as their male counterparts. Mental illness accounts for 13% of the world disease burden for teens. An estimated 12.8% of adolescents in the U.S. experience at least one episode of major depression. 36% of young girls reported being extremely anxious daily.
Mm-hmm.
Teen depression has increased by 59% since 2007. And those teens who suffer from depression also have a 30% chance in developing a drug problem later in life.
And that's what we talked about, like, how so few of them are getting the access to the care that they need, and that they're turning around and seeking self-medication. One thing I want to touch on before we close is, like, dude, I'm so thankful, not only for you, but for this podcast and what it's done for my mental health, and, just getting to sit down and spend time together and share things that we're both experiencing. And whether it be on the podcast or just a phone call, like, I'm so thankful that, like, while I haven't had my therapist, I truly feel that I have someone that I love and that I trust, that, like, I know isn't going to be non-judgmental and will give me the best advice that he has. And, like, if I call you at 3 a.m, I know that you're coming running, and, like,
dude, don't do that. Don't cry, bro. It's just what a friend is.
yeah, man.
I want to give some ways to recognize a mental health crisis. If you're experiencing excessive worry, fear, or paranoia, unable to take care of yourself or complete a day-to-day activity that you normally would, feeling incredibly sad or low, changes in normal habits, behaviors, and appearance, these can all be signs. I'm not saying if you have these right now that you're in a mental health crisis. I'm just saying these are signs that are out there. And then I also want to give emergency lines. So 24/7, there's national hotlines. You can obviously call 911. There's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 988. There's the crisis text line, so you can text 741-741. And then there's same thing for Spanish is 988 is the hotline. If you're a youth or LGBTQ plus, you can call the Trevor Project, and it's 1-866-488-7386. Or you can also text the Trevor Project. It's 687-687. And depending on your area, there's also warm lines and helplines, I'm sure, in most major areas. Which there's a bunch here in Richmond, which I won't give out because we have a broader audience, I guess, than just our local base than I thought. I didn't we didn't shout out any new places today. Didn't look it up. Kind of because I feel like today is like a heavier thing, and I didn't want, I wanted to be some kind of serious today. But I'm just glad that this got done because May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
I know. I'm glad we got one in before the end of the month.
Yeah, me too. And I've been sad because I've done mental health podcasts in the past, and it never got aired for other reasons. And so I'm glad that I'm getting to make one myself.
Let's end on a good note, dude. We're double digits. This is episode 10.
Yeah, we're hitting 10, baby.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Yep.
We're coming for you at 25 now.
We are. We're doing good. You had a good point the other day that like there are other options that we don't always have to meet here. Like you work close to my house and you can get off work and we can record remotely in my garage or whatever.
Yeah, it turns out those wireless mics that I got for our trip turned out to be really good.
Yeah.
The sound quality was better than I expected.
And actually, Beth, we have after my mother-in-law passed, my youngest daughter, my middle daughter moved upstairs, and my youngest daughter moved into my mother-in-law's room, and so we have an extra room downstairs. It's supposed to be, I guess, like a formal dining room or a sitting room. And Beth was like, "Why don't you make it into a podcast studio?" She's like, "We can soundproof it and put up like some sliding doors or whatever for you guys." Or
yeah, you could do that.
So
I mean, if we keep growing.
Yeah, don't give me an excuse to like go on Amazon and buy stuff. I will take full advantage of it.
I know. I think you're right. I think we should change our mic setup a little bit, because right now it's kind of hard working around these boom mics I have attached to the other dining room chairs.
Yeah.
And can make it hard to sit down at the table as a family right now, but it's working. I just want everyone to know that you're not alone, that there's help out there, and if you need it, you can reach out to us on social media. You can reach out at bebettereveryday24@gmail.com is our email address. Like I said, there's social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm pretty sure you can leave comments where you listen at. I'm not exactly sure how they reach us, if I get notified or not, but I will definitely be watching because I think mental health is important. I think it's something, the more we talk about it, the easier it is to talk about. And if you're still listening at this point, I really appreciate it. You want to close out with anything?
No, thanks guys for listening. We appreciate everything.
Remember, be better every day.